making more progress now, yes. Dear, we're making more progress now, yes. Dear, we're making more progress now. Still have a long way to go. They promised to bring us more revenue and quality. Promised to bring us more revenue and quality. Promised to bring us more revenue and quality. Instead is now on its way. Yes, dear, we're making more progress now.
Hello everybody. What a beautiful day we have today. The beach is loaded. I'm here a day early this week because the people at Charter Communications have a business event on the day I normally tape, so we made a deal and I came in a day early. I'm all ready. I had to rush a bit to get ready, so forgive me if I do make a couple mistakes here tonight. Been up all night working on it. I went down about 1 o'clock in the morning to a restaurant and had some breakfast and started working on this continuing working on this approach, and there were two people broken down in the parking lot in their truck, so they said, can we borrow your jack so we can fix our flat tire? And I said, go ahead and borrow the jack. When you're done with it, just put it in the back of my truck, and good luck. Well, I went out after I had my breakfast about 5 in the morning, and there was no jack. So it's a different time we live in now. It's very difficult when you lend people things, they don't always return them. So then I told that story to a few people. They said, they got the same problem. So, you know, and it's very interesting. Anyway, a couple things I want to talk about. This week we did have a meeting, and the town budget meeting was on Monday night. I went to that. I also went to the other meeting they had at 6 o'clock, and they did agree to take a donation of the property there, and I'm very, very happy to hear that, because they can join that to some other properties the town owns and perhaps sell it to somebody and get it on the revenue rolls. We'll be talking a bit about that kind of thing tonight, because this tonight, as I told you, is the second quarterly report. And the second quarterly report will be given tonight. Be a lot of statistics. So if you're not a statistics person, or you don't really want to see how people are voting, then this isn't the program to watch. The budget referendum, the budget's still going to be the same. They did not cut it at the town budget meeting, although there were a couple attempts to do so. The budget is still 1.33 mils and increase, and that'll be 26 mils if it's passed, and it's 5.41% tax increase if it passes. If it doesn't pass, then we have to go through the whole cycle again. But anyway, the budget referendum is from 8 to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Gilbert School on July 19th. I don't have a card for that today. Next week I will have one. The other thing I want to say today is that I do have my businessmen, the founders of the town, helping me, because this is the kind of thing they would be interested in if they were still here. They're going to, you're going to see quite a bit of numbers on how the town's progressing since the last election. I was up at the landfill the other day, and I was introduced to Bob Azawi, who calls into almost every program. I hope I got his name pronounced right. He did pronounce it for me, and I tried to remember it. He's, I think it's a Polish name, and I'm pretty good at Polish names, but some of them escape me. He lives in New Hartford, and he's very interested in the politics in his town of Winsted. Probably more so than a lot of people who live in Winsted, but he calls into programs and he writes letters to the newspapers, and he's always very positive. So this, to a certain extent today, Bob, I want to dedicate this program to you for being so interested in our town. I wish more people were. And the other thing I'd like to say is that I read in the paper this morning that the Aurora Estates appeal is in at Litchfield Court now. So, and it looks like they'll be still discussing with our Planning and Zoning Commission a possible reconfiguration of Aurora Estates. I don't think it'll be the kind of thing I was hoping for, but it'll be a lot better than what we have now, and we could use that revenue. I would prefer to see it with less children in it for this particular development. Other developments, I don't have any problem, but until we get some revenue in here and get this town balanced over the next 5 to 10 years, it'd be nice to see that. So I want to now go to the agenda and show you what I'm going to do tonight. We're going to do comments, campaign promises of both parties. I did that at the first quarterly report. The quarterly report will be every 3 months. This will be the second one today. Quarterly review, number one, quick recap. I've actually now incorporated that more into the whole show, so I'm going to be doing these together. And then the quarterly review for number two, the second 3 months, which ended on May 6th, 2008. So we're already into the third quarter now. And then there'll be a whole bunch of statistics here, and there'll be approximate statistics. It's a little hard going through this whole process. I'll explain the process to you in a minute, and you're never going to be exact. Somebody's always going to find one place where you probably should have put a no instead of a yes, but I try to use it right from the records. Now, the other thing I want to point out before I start is that the methodology, I hope this slide will fit on here all right, because I'm doing a horizontal slide now. This is the old triangle thing, and tonight is all about this triangle. But remember, in order to get things to go in the right direction and be positive, you have to face problems where this yellow is right up front. And that's what these 5 businessmen are doing now, and the Democrats are helping them at times. And so that's good. Now, we're only still way up here in the front of this triangle. This is like a 5-year period, could be 10 years. It's going to take a long time in this town. It's not going to be less than 5 years, but we can make a lot of progress over the years. So if you look from here to here, it's probably going to be at least 5 years, maybe more. Now, the way you don't want to do this is the normal way people do things, backwards, and that when they run projects, that's why they call in troubleshooters, and that's why they call in people like me to help them, because they usually start out not with enough definition here, and they go up this slope and they go to infinity. This is the infinity sign in mathematics. You just go up there at infinity, and they never get finished, all right? They keep looping around in here because every time they get down here, they figure something they have to do and go back. Now, don't get this confused with evolution and revolution. You still want an evolutionary approach when you do this. Matter of fact, it's absolutely essential to have an evolutionary approach to force all the problems out at the earliest stage of system development. That's a troubleshooting rule. Force all the problems out at the early stages of system development. Now, that doesn't mean they'll all be forced out here, because you have to start going down the slope to encounter other programs. They loop around a little as you go down. The whole thing you want to stop is getting all the way down here and then having to redo the whole foundation of the skyscraper. We talked about that on this show before a couple times. So that's what I want to talk to you about. That's what we're going to be saying tonight. We're going to be moving down that triangle, or at least the selectmen are. I'm not doing much about it. Now, the methodology that we have is first, I take the meeting minutes from all 6 months of both quarters, and we did the first one, the first 3 months, and for the first quarter report, and then I just finished the second one for the second quarterly report, And we compile a report from the meeting minutes. So this is all taken from information from the town hall. I may misrepresent it, it may have a mistake in it, but basically all the information comes from the town hall, but any errors are mine. So don't blame the people in the town hall. I might have misread some stuff. Number 2, produce statistics from voting entries in the report. So I read the report, and then I go through each of the voting. All the minutes have, the town clerk very carefully puts in the voting records in all these minutes. So I go through those, and I say, okay, who voted for what, at what time, and I mark it down, and then I come up with these slides I'm going to be showing you. I divide into 5 categories. Now, if we had a plan for the town, a 5-year plan that I keep professing on this program that we need, that has revenue, cost savings, taxes over the next 5 years, and expediting the solution type things and all that, then I would do my quarter report against that. But we don't have a plan like that. The best we can come up with is maybe a 1-year plan, and there's usually no revenue in that. It's a minimal amount of revenue in that. So there is about $1 million worth plus the grants and things, so there is revenue there, but it's not an increase in revenue, especially the kind we're looking for. So, so what I do is I just do it with what I have available to me. So I go through these minutes and I just divide them into the categories that I would like to see in a 5-year plan, and then I sort all these minutes into those categories. I'll show you that in a minute. And then, so I divide them into 5 categories. The last category is campaign promises that we haven't yet addressed, and they'll be addressed some at budget time, some maybe even later than that. One of them is the charter revision, which will take at least until the next election, if it ever gets resolved at all. And that. So the categories are revenue, cost savings, taxes, expediting the solution, which is my rag bag. That's what you throw everything in there that helps you to progress and keep things going from week to week and month to month, meeting to meeting. Additional campaign promises, and this is all to an approximate accuracy. I try to figure out an accuracy for it, but you know, I might be off by 1 or 2% here, but it is pretty close, and it's good enough for our purposes here. So there's always somebody out there who says, well, you forgot this little thing, and I'm saying, well, that doesn't matter. The important thing here is the momentum and how the people are doing in general, and it's pretty accurate information, I must say. Now, the assumptions for tonight are, in the quarter review are, no call to order. I don't put anything in for voting for calls to order or to vote to adjourn. Yeah, I don't put anything for executive sessions, you know, voting to go to executive session and not voting to come out of executive session. No approval of previous minutes. I don't bother with that. Meetings that are executive session only with no vote following, I don't bother with. If there's a vote following, that'll come out at the regular meeting. It'll be in the minutes, and I do put that in. No meetings where votes weren't taken. They have special meetings from time to time, and no votes are taken. They just discuss things. They don't take any votes. Well, I don't have any of that in there because there's no votes to record. March 18, 2008 budget presentation. There were no votes. No voting. There were 3 meetings that the selectmen had to get information from the managers that report to the town manager. Then they had a meeting with the school, and I went to all those meetings, but there were no votes taken there. I think four meetings there or so altogether, and they just listened to all the people in town, but they didn't make any votes. March 19, 2008 executive session regarding labor contracts and personnel issues. I didn't do that. March 20th, there was a budget presentation, no voting. March 19th, budget presentation, no voting. March 23rd, executive session. We don't know anything about that. March 27th, executive session. March 27th, budget meeting with the Board of Education in Gilbert. No votes were taken there, to the best of my knowledge, except to begin the meeting and end the meeting. So I don't do too much. I don't do any of that in this. I'm just looking for the real meat here. What happens during the meeting, as I report every other week to you, what happens during the meeting to get things done in these 5 categories, to move this town forward, and to get us to where we're breaking even and possibly ahead and maybe even get a quantum leap here. So that's what my main interest is, and I'm focused on it, and I've got blinders on and blinkers on, and that's my main interest. Other people are worried about reducing taxes and other things like that, but my main issue is how do we become solvent here and in a prosperous mode where we can do the things that satisfy the wants and needs of this town without having 3-4 budget referendums and cutting the budget back, which in the long run is not going to get us out of this pickle. The revenue, additional taxpayers are what we need, and there are many forms of that. We've been over that on this program. So the first quarter were the approximate voting records from November 6, 2007, when these new selectmen were elected, to February 4th, 2008. Those are the dates that the first quarter covers. The second quarter covers approximately approximate voting records from February 6, 2008 to May 6, 2008. So we've already had a couple of meetings in the third quarter, but I always do this after the quarter settles down. I have time to analyze it and look at it. And this was a little tough this time because we had all the budget things going on, budget meetings to attend, budget meetings to report on, and everything, and all the things happening in planning and zoning. So now, I said this the first time, I'm going to repeat it. The best of my knowledge, and I did again send this out to the Democratic Party to see if they wanted to add anything to it. I'll touch on that a bit, but facilitate and encourage responsible, balanced development. This is what the Republicans, this is what they promised in their campaign over 6 months ago. Revenue, they want to make revenue a top priority for this town. Facilitate and encourage responsible, balanced development. And the main thing they're trying to do now, they're trying to get all development moving, but they really want to get these additional taxpayers into these big developments that have minimum drain on the resources of the town. And whatever drain they do have is built into their projections that they've given to the town during their public hearings. Promote economic development for new and existing businesses. You're already beginning to see some of that stuff happen. Things are coming out of mothballs there. And then costs, try to manage the town of Winchester and school costs responsibly. They're working on that. Increase the next grand list, encouraging the addition of new taxpayers in a balanced manner. And again, I got to reemphasize, you need profitable taxpayers. If you bring in taxpayers that take more than they give, then you don't get ahead, you go backwards. Charter revision, consider a mayoral form of government. That's one of their campaign promises. The infrastructure, update the town and school buildings where necessary in an evolutionary economic manner. There are different ways to approach all this, and you know the basic way the Republicans want is to earn before you spend and to hurry up and get more revenue in so you can spend. The way I see the other minority party working is, let's spend, let's get a bond issue now for as much as we can, and let's get on with things, and then we'll figure out how to pay for it later. Well, the figuring out is the taxpayers. So I think we're in for a big, interesting year here when it comes to that. Next is, notice the word evolutionary in there. Move the responsibility of maintaining the school buildings to the town. I'm not sure that's going to happen in the end, but that's all part of the Charter Revision Commission looking at the charter. No decisions have been made on any of this. Have a full-time rec director. Looks like that'll be resolved with this budget if it gets approved. There is money in there for a full-time rec director. Have a full-time fire marshal and have a full-time building inspector. Those are campaign promises by the Republican Party. The major campaign promises by the Democrats were promote energy conservation. You'll see that moving along very slowly, but it is moving along from meeting to meeting, and you'll see it in the report here. Promote new bond issue for town and school improvements. That was a big one on this party and another party called the Winchester Party, and they were in favor of that. That did not make it, so that's not here. It hasn't died yet. They're still trying to revolve it for the next election, but it's unlikely that that'll happen unless it's quite a bit different than it was before. There were a couple of attempts at the meeting the other night, the town budget meeting, to talk about moving the OCR money in the budget out to a small bond, but that got defeated 3-1 or so, and I personally don't think that's a good idea, but we won't discuss that today. Some other day I'll spend a whole hour on this bond versus non-bond issue. But be careful you listen to on bonds and non-bonds, because there's a lot of misinformation floating around this town about these things, what their benefits are and what they're not. Promote conservation for the town and the lake, for everybody. That's the Democrats want to do that, and there are things happening in that area. Promote improvements around town parks and along Main Street. So, and as you know, lots happening in those areas with grants and with reviving old plans and everything. So there are things happening there, all right? Now I'm going to begin to I'm going to show you quickly, if you can put the camera on me for a minute. I do have here, I'll show you this quickly, and then we can go from that to back to the board again. But you see, what I do is I take and I make up a report, and I can't go through all this tonight. I did it at the last time, but I've taken a different approach this time because I have to talk about 2 quarters instead of 1. But this is the report for the second quarter, and what it has in it are all the minutes from this quarter, last quarter, sorted into those 5 categories I told you about. And I put red on there for, I'll put it up just so you can see, I put red on there for things that are campaign commitments, and then I put a little R or a D or an R and D in this column for whoever's campaign commitments they were. And I'm just going to flash a few up here. You can see these are various actions that happened at the meeting. Some of them don't have a red on them. Now, the other thing I want to point out to you is this time in this quarter report, I didn't do it last time, but I've counted all the motions. Who's making the motions in these meetings? And who's seconding the motions? That's very important, because no matter whether you're in the majority party or the minority party, you can make motions, and you can get things on the table, and you should make motions, but they should be well thought out, and they should be a lot of homework done before you do it, and they should be well communicated to the other people in the selectmen group, and especially gone over with the town manager. There never should be any surprises with the town manager. He should always know what's going to be brought up at the select meetings, and he should be prepared for it, and the selectmen should prepare him for it, and they should prepare with him. And in some cases, he will bring the things up at the town meeting, in most cases. Once in a while, it will be necessary for them to bring something up, but again, it's not a political meeting, it's not a show everybody what you know meeting, it's a get business done meeting, and keep things moving and do the right thing. So I could show you this whole report. It goes on for about 100 pages because I blew it up into this large type so people in the audience could read it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I can tell you it all just comes from the town minutes. You can go down and get a copy. If you want to see this copy, you're welcome. I'll show it to you. Here's one that's got an R and a D in it because they both wanted to do this activity. And their campaign promises, they wanted to do that. Okay, having said that, I'm now going to start talking about the second quarter, and in some cases, combining it with the first quarter. All right, the first thing I always like to talk about, because I think it's the most important thing that we have to get to straighten this town out. You can't do it by cutting taxes alone forever. You can't do it by bonding forever. What you need to do is get revenue coming in like you would do in your own family. If you had a family with not much revenue and you just continue to borrow money at huge interest rates and you never got the revenue to pay for it, then you had to go to your father or your uncle or your grandfather or relatives, then that's not really the kind of position you want to be in. So here we have to go to the taxpayers that are already overburdened anyway. So what we want to do is work on revenue. So the second quarter revenue, I've counted up the actions for the quarter, and in the yes column, a no column, and then in this column is for people who recuse themselves or don't vote, ask for abstainment. So I lumped those together here because there's very few of those. And I must say, this quarter we've got a lot less abstains than we had the first quarter. Remember the first quarter, I told you that we had a lot of abstains. I showed you the numbers. They're going down, and you'll see that as we go through here this evening. So Selectman Fracasso, the mayor, 8 times we had a chance to vote for revenue, and 8 times he voted yes. No no's and no abstains. Berlinski, 800. Liskin, 800. Capabianca, I apologize again, I always use Cappy here because I can't fit Capabianca in here without goofing up my format. So 800. Ham, 800. Renzullo, 620. Now these are all 100%, of course. They voted for 8 out of 8. So I think between the two meetings, they've all got 100%, the 5 businessmen. Renzullo and Perez, who are in the minority party, they voted 6 times. Renzullo voted 6 times yes, 2 times no, and no abstains. Thank you very much, Selectman Renzullo, for that nice clean record. Perez, 4 times voted yes, and 3 times voted no, and 1 time abstained for one reason or another. Now, let me say that there are good reasons sometimes to vote no. Just because people vote no doesn't mean they're wrong. They have a different philosophy. For example, this selectman tends to vote no whenever they want to sell a piece of property on the lake that they're not going to have a conservation easement on, because she thinks the water can then perk down through the land and it's better for the lake. That's her opinion. And I'm not saying she's wrong. But anyway, that's one reason. There are other reasons why people will vote no. They tend to vote no a lot on these OCR things too, and because the bond issue failed, and for some reason they can't understand that. So anyway, we got a 4 yes, 3 no, 1 abstain. Not too good a record in the revenue area, which is our first priority as a town. But anyway, I put down the percentages for these two. These are 100%. 75% of the time, Mr. Renzullo voted yes. 25% time, he voted no. Now, this is a very small sampling, but that's how many there were, according to my judgment. Maybe somebody can find another one in there that I didn't put in the right category, but that won't change it too much. And then Perez, 50% of the time, did not vote for more revenue for one reason or another, good or bad. 38% of the time voted no. And 1 time voted, abstained. I'm pretty sure, I think she abstained or she recused herself. I can't remember exactly what. It's 12% of the time. Now, what I've done is I put quarter 1 and quarter 2 together. It's a little different than I did it the first time because I didn't have a quarter 2, but quarter 1 and quarter 2 together, and I moved these a little. I hope I didn't goof them up on the TV. Anyway, and so for revenue for quarter 1 and quarter 2, again, we have a 100% record here for these 5 businessmen, and doing like their forefathers would have done. That you see in back of me when the camera's on me. 18 yes, no 0, abstain. Now remember what Selectman Liskin said when he was running for office during the campaign. He said, "I will never abstain." Now, I will always vote yes or no. Many charters in the state, you must vote yes or no. And when you abstain, you must say why you abstained. Now, there are good reasons to abstain. And if you have a conflict of interest, for example, and maybe there's other ones too. But here we have no abstentions. We have everybody voting either yes or no. They happen to vote yes for all these in both quarters. They have a perfect record for 2 quarters in voting yes in the revenue side. Renzullo, 12 yeses, 4 noes over 2 quarters, and 2 either abstentions. I think mainly abstentions for him. He might have recused himself once too, I'm not sure. But I mean, this column just doesn't vote for one reason or another, either abstention or whatever, recusal, they don't vote. So that comes out. But anyway, and then again at the bottom of the pile here, we've got Selectman Perez with 8 in the yes column, 9 in the no column, voted no over the 2 quarters. she voted against the revenue things more than she voted in favor of them, and then one in the either recusal or abstain column. So now again, they have a 100% record here. Pardon me. So there's no sense in me belaboring that. That's over 2 quarters. So all I can say here is you promised us you would put revenue as a first top priority. You've done so, and I and all the people who voted for you, I'm sure, thank you for paying this much attention to the revenue issues. Now, when I put up the motion and second statistics, you're going to see they put up a lot of motions in this area too, and a lot of seconds, and that's one of the reasons why this thing is moving along. Now, would I like to see that be 36 instead of 18? Of course. Whatever we can do to get more actions in to help bring revenue into this town, profitable revenue into this town, in addition to the taxpayers we have already, new taxpayers, that's what I'd like to see here. So now when we get to Renzullo, it's 67% of the time he voted yes over 2 months, 22% of the time he voted no over 2 months, and 11% of the time he was in the abstain or recuse category. Perez, Selectman Perez, 8 times yes, 9 times no, 1 time in here, so that's 44%. 50% in the no column, and 6% in this column. So I think twice when it's time to vote again next time, because revenue is very important to us. And either we got to get people to campaign to get us the revenue, or we don't vote for them. That's my view. Total votes, 18 over the 2 months in that category. Again, somebody else looking at it might want to put more in there, a little less in there. I'd be happy to see their numbers. I'll change mine if they got a better idea. But so far, nobody's ever got back to me with that. So far here in the revenue column over 2 months, 2 quarters, 2 quarters, 6 months, the Republicans, yes, 100% of the time. Democrats, yes, 56% of the time. And if one of my granddaughters was here now, I'd have them do a cartwheel or a somersault to say how happy we are to see those numbers and how not happy we are to see this number. Okay, now we're going to talk a bit about cost saving. Cost saving, we do come together more as we did in the first quarter. Everybody seems to be interested in cost saving and trying hard in cost saving. So the numbers come a little closer here. First quarter, cost saving, Picasso, yes, 8 times, 100%. Berlinski, Liskin, Capabianca, and Ham. They all voted. They had a chance to vote 8 times. They voted yes every time to save costs. Now, when I talk about this cost saving, I'm not talking about any of this budget stuff, because the budget stuff is not cost saving. You can't save costs until you have an approved budget. What you have now is people asking for more than we're prepared to give them. So that's why it got voted down at the town referendum. We'll see what happens to the next one. We're down to 5.14%. That may or may not make it. I hear different reports from people around town about its chances, but let's hope we all get out and vote. And if enough people vote, then at least very large numbers will show us that we probably make the right decision. But anyway, thank you again for this, 40 in the first quarter. Renzullo and Perez, 8 and 7. For them, it's 15, but they're almost perfect here, too. If this were 8 instead of 7, then we'd have perfect 100%. But anyway, 15, 1, and 1 here, and that's a good record. There's nothing wrong with that. 94% yes, 3% no, 3% abstained or recused. Now, during the second quarter, it's equally as good. Second quarter. By the way, the first quarter had a couple more meetings in it than this quarter did. It's the way things work. There was 1 month when they only had 1 meeting. It depends on holidays and things like that. So, second quarter, cost saving, Fracasso, 15. All the businessmen had perfect votes on the cost saving. So we got 100% here. Selectman Renzullo, 100%, 15, 0, 0. Selectman Perez, a little lower, Probably, I don't know what that would be, but probably 90% or so. 8, 13, 1, and 1. So altogether, they had a chance to vote 30 times, and 28 times they voted yes. So they deserve to be congratulated for the cost-saving statistics for the last 2 months, not including the budget. I do have, I think, here some separate slides about the budget that I will talk to you about if we get there. So 1 no and 1 abstain. So we're moving here, and I do think that the people in the minority party are really interested in cost saving, just like everybody else is in this town. And but it should not be the #1 priority. Cost saving is very important. It should be almost an equal priority, but the revenue has to be the #1 priority. Everything is based upon that. You cannot get your new schools. You cannot get your new police station. You cannot get your new fire departments, 2 of them. You cannot get Main Street all redone. You can't do all that stuff without revenue. That's it. But you can't do it with just cost saving. It just won't happen. And it doesn't take a genius to understand that. So for that category, cost saving total, no budget included, no budget negotiations included. Republicans, 100%. Democrats, 94%. And no matter what anybody does to question these statistics, they can go do it all again themselves, and they have people that are capable of doing it. They won't come out much different than this. I mean, certainly no different up here. They might come out a little different down here, but not much, not enough to make any difference. The important thing is that the revenue is not getting the attention it needs. This is getting this cost saving is getting the attention it needs. For example, in the revenue column, we had many less action items, than we have here. So we've got an imbalance on this thing. Okay, now I'm going to just tell you, this is not part of this quarterly review, but I just want to show you, I told you once before, a rough idea how people voted on reducing. I do say cost saving here. I'm going to change it right now because that's, I'll have everybody mad at me. This is reducing budget. You're reducing budget request. People in this town make a lot of big mistakes saying they put in a big request, like either the school or any of the rest of the town, they put in for a big budget. And then during the budget process, they get reduced. And then a final budget gets agreed by the taxpayers. Well, anything before that is not a budget cut, right? It's a want and desire and need cut. But the budget cuts don't happen until the budget is approved. And if you want to hear that speech, you can watch any taxpayer association or independent party program, and you will hear that, okay? So I've just changed it. Reducing budget requests. The town came in for 7.1%, 16% needs on a tax increase, and they're now down to 5.41%. We'll be voting on July 19th, and this is kind of how it breaks down. The Republicans on, again, it shouldn't have cost saving here, I'll cross that out. Budget reduction prior to its vote is for CASO 55, yes, 2, no. So the yeses are either to reduce the budget or add a little more in. The no's are either to reduce the budget or add a little more in. So during the process, now I do have all this information, but I could never get through it on this program in one program. So I'm just going to give you the summary now. So you got 55, 2, and 0, 55, 2, and 0. Liskin 57 and 0. Cappy, Mr. Capabianca, Selectman Capabianca 54, 3 and 0, and Selectman Ham 55, 2 and 0. So they didn't vote unanimously here. There are various reasons why they voted no, and sometimes they voted no to increase the budget if somebody proposed it, and sometimes they voted no to not decrease the budget if somebody proposes. So unless we go through each one of these, but in general, you can see most of the things are to reduce the budget. Now, when you go to Rinzulo, they're also up there pretty high. 47 out of the 57, or 57 items were discussed over 4 meetings. There was an April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd meeting, where they voted. The selectmen, they were open public meetings. I think they were even, might have even been taped by somebody. And then there was an April 7th, at part of their selectmen meeting, they made the final decisions before they voted to send the budget off to the town meeting. So Renzullo 47, 10 no, Perez 46 and 11 no. Now I will say, if you go look at the records, and you can get them from the town hall, they had a tendency here to want to increase the budget a bit, and they did vote no on cutting $600,000 out of the education budget, and they voted no on including in the rec director full-time, and a few things like that. So they have good reason for what they're doing, and it's part of what I consider part of their philosophy. These are both people are voting according to their party philosophies, and I'm not always sure they are the party's philosophies or sometimes the individual's philosophies, but there is a difference there. Okay, so again, we have some percents here. The Republicans, 94% yes, no, 6%. Democrats, yes, 82%, no, 18%. So you can see there's a difference in philosophies between these two parties on how money should be either reduced from the budget or added to the budget. And if you need more detail, you can get it from the town hall. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is expediting the solution. For quarter one, I did a redo, because when I was going through quarter one this time, getting it in shape and getting ready to do this joint quarter one, quarter two program, I noticed that I forgot a November 8th meeting that the selectmen had, and I didn't include the statistics in one area, and that was I think I'm pretty sure it was in expediting the solution. So I did a redo on that, and the redo is expediting the solution for first quarter, not second quarter, first quarter. Ricasso 45, yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. Remember, expediting the solution is moving things, getting it done, giving yes to the town manager, getting bills paid, moving money from one account to another. It's things to get the major things done, things to get revenue in, things to get costs saved, things to run the town properly, that kind of thing. So 45, 45 and 2, 45 and 2, 45 and 2, 45 and 2. And in some cases, the twos are somebody brings up, hey, I'd like to appoint somebody to a commission. They might vote against that and say no. So, but in general, they vote in favor of most of these things. And the next is Renzullo, 41 out of 47. And at the bottom again, Selectman Perez, 37 out of 47. And so that's how that kind of goes. Now, I think you'd see if the other party were in power, which they're not, then maybe these numbers would be reversed. Maybe they'd have all the 45s. But in general, and when I go to other towns and sit in meetings, they usually put party interests aside once the election's over. I'll never forget down in Torrington in this last election when a person from the Democratic Party ran against the Republican incumbent, and then the Democrat lost and immediately put an article in the paper to the press saying, congratulations to the party that won, and let's all work with them, and we wish them the best. And I've never heard anything negative from him since. So I think we have to work together. We can't go 2 years with a separation in philosophies, and I think we've got one now, and we've got to improve on it, although these numbers are getting closer here in here. Now remember, there's a lot of actions in here that are very simple. They're no-brainers, like approve a refund of some tax money that the tax collector says we shouldn't be taking. So that kind of thing everybody votes yes to. It's unanimous. Now in the first quarterly report I separated those out more, but there's not time to do that now. But if you look at the minutes, you'll see that. So Republicans, here's how I calculate it. There were a total of 47 votes times the 5 Republicans. That's 235 votes. So you take the number that they were yes, was 225 they voted yes on, 235 you divide by and you get 96%. No, 9 divided by 235, you get 3.5% roughly. And abstain or recuse, 1, 235.5%. Democrats, 47 times 2 equals 94, and yes, 78 divided by 94 is 83%. No, 10 divided by 94 is 10%, and so on. So, and then when you get down to recuse, there's 7 there, abstain or recuse, and that's 7%. Mainly are abstains. Very seldom are there recused, but there's 1 or 2 around 7%. So there were 47 votes each there. Okay, now, for quarter 2, expedite the solution. For Picasso, 29, 0-0. Berlinski, 29, 0-0. Liskin, 29, 0-0. Cappy, Selectman Capabianca, 29, 0-0. And Ham, Selectman Ham, 28, 0-1. He recused himself on the Kelly's Kitchen thing. And I think on the first one, I'm not positive, but I think I made a mistake here. I think on the first one, oh, he did. Yeah, here's an abstain here. I got to see. It's on the first one. I got a mistake here. There should be an abstain. No, not there. It's back on the, well, anyway, I got a mistake somewhere. Picasso did abstain once when they made a vote on in the expediting solution. They had a vote on the St. Joseph's or St. Anthony's school. I can never remember which is the school and which is the church. But anyway, it's down there. So he abstained on that one. So anyway, expedite the solution quarter 2. You've got all these 29s, 128 and 1. And then you've got Renzullo with 25 out of a possible 29. This isn't bad. 3 and 1. Perez with 24, 4 and 1. Much better. The expedite the solution tends to be a lot of actions that you almost can't say no to, but there are some in there that you can say no to, and people do, and they do abstain or recuse. So Republicans, yes, 99% of the time, 1% for the recuse or abstain. Democrats, yes, 84% of the time, no, 12% of the time, and recuse or abstain about 4% of the time. There were 29 votes each in this particular thing. So now I did a total for all the expedite the solutions for both quarters. And the total is, for both quarters, for Picasso, 74, 1 no, and 1 abstention. Berlinski, 74, 2 no's and no abstentions. Liskin kept his promise, 74 yes, 2 no's, and no abstentions. Capabianca, 74, 2, and no abstentions. And then Ham, 13, 2, and 1, which he thought was better for him to abstain on because he had done some work for Kelly's Kitchen, charity type work. He still abstained. So, and he even said when he abstained, I promised I would never abstain, but in his particular case, I do have to abstain. So he abstained. But they're going to try their best not to abstain unless there's a conflict of interest of some sort, no matter how minor it is. Renzullo, 66, 6 and 4. Perez, 61 out of a possible 76. 11 no's and 4 in the abstain or recuse category. So with that one, you can see the Republicans, yes, 97% of the time. About no, 2% of the time. And recuse or abstain 1% of the time. Very positive. Can't get a heck of a lot better than that, you know. So let's go. They've been going for 6 months. They're doing what they said they would do, and we appreciate that. The Democrats, they didn't do too bad here, 84%. I'd rather see them up around 97% too, but they're not. So no is 11%, and abstain, recuse is 5%, which I think is kind of high there. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a very interesting subject now. I decided to put this in for now and in the future because it's very important for everyone to see who raises issues at the meetings, who brings the motions to the table, and who does all the homework to prepare the motions, who seconds the motions, and then who works with the town manager to make sure these motions are understood, and and the right things to do, and there'll be less and less motions put in by the selectmen in the future as the town manager puts in more and more motions. But over the first 6 months, the selectmen did most of the motions. Okay, here we go. In next quarterly report, you will see the town managers starting to have motions on this list. Quarter 1, that's November 6, 2007 to May 6, 2008. Selectman Ham, he made 5 motions and 13 seconds. Liskin, 10 motions in 18 seconds. Selectman Capabianca, 38. He's a workhorse here in this column. 38 motions. Now, and 11 seconds. Now, motions take a lot of homework. There's a lot of times between the meetings that you have to spend on preparing these motions, going to the town manager, talking to the other selectmen, talking to the people involved in the motions. So there's a lot of work involved here. And these numbers tell a story. So next is Fracasso. He's the mayor, and he doesn't make too many motions, but he does make some. You'll see. He made 1 motion. Usually, when Fracasso makes a motion, it's a tough, hard decision that has to be made. And he, as mayor, prefers to take that responsibility and make the motion. And I thank him for that. Selectman Berlinski, as you can see, he doesn't make too many motions, but he does do a lot of seconding. So he's 16. He's number 2 in the second for the Republicans. So you got 55 and 58 seconds. 55 motions, 58 seconds. And very seldom, but once in a while, these people are seconding a Democratic motion, and sometimes the Democrats, very seldom too, second a Republican motion. That needs to be improved upon over the years. But anyway, 55, 58, 85% for motions, and 89%. And so they're, I'm going to show you in a few minutes why, but they're about 14% of what they really should be doing. That 14% should be being done by the minority party if we had a balanced system. And by balance, I don't mean an equal distribution of selectmen. I just mean the both parties carrying their share of the weight. And 18% above what they should be doing for seconds. Perez and Renzullo, the minority, Perez 4 motions in 3 seconds in the first quarter. Renzullo 5 motions in 4 seconds in the first quarter. So it's 11% and 14% of the motions in the seconds, and minus 15%. That means they should be doing a lot more motioning. And minus 18%, they should be doing a lot more motioning. But in order to motion, you have to do a lot of work, you have to do a lot of homework, you have to have good issues, good things to bring up. And there's a lot of compromise has to take place between the meetings. A lot of energy has to be put there. So quarter 2, during quarter 2, we have February 6th to May 6th of 2008. Ham, motion. He made 1 motion on the regular, this R means regular selectmen meetings, 1 and then 10 seconds. In the budget meetings we had, he made 32 motions in 15 seconds. Liskin in the regular meetings made 6 motions and 21 seconds. Budget meeting, he made 4 motions and 12 seconds. Selectman Capabianca made 37 motions in the regular meeting. Definitely the workhorse here of bringing up motions. And 3 seconds. During the budget meetings, the 4 budget meetings, 17 motions for Selectman Capabianca and 24 seconds. So he's working real hard in here, and we should all appreciate that. Now, Fracasso, Mayor Fracasso, Selectman Fracasso, 4 motions, because that not only makes the real tough, hard ones that he really feels are important for the mayor to make. That's 4 and then 1 second. For Fracasso, he's made 5 budget. And again, the toughest budget motions were made by, some of the toughest ones were made by Mayor Fracasso. Not all of them, but most of them. Berlinski, during the regular meetings, he made no motions, but he made 13 seconds. And during the budget meetings, he made no motions, but he made 15 seconds. So he's done a lot of work in the second area. So here we have 94% of all motions come from the businessmen in the Republican Party. 96% of all seconds come from the businessmen in the Republican Party. Selectman Perez, during the regular meeting, made one motion that I could count. I might be wrong by one or two, but I only saw one there, and two in seconds. And then in the budget meeting, she made three that I could count, and motions and no seconds. Selectman Renzullo in the regular meeting made two motions and one. Now, they did make some motions that never got a second. I didn't count those. And they brought up some issues where they wanted to make a motion and they couldn't get anybody to respond to change their vote, so I didn't count that either. I only count ones where votes happen. And so 2 and 1, and on the budget, 1 and 2. Now, again, in the budget meeting, you did make some motions, but they never came to fruition. There was no vote on them. They were either withdrawn or didn't make it one way or the other. So now the percentages there are very low, 6% and 4%. And there's no real reason for that. They could be putting good motions on the table to get us revenue, good motions for cost saving. They could be putting good motions for expediting solutions. There's a lot they can be do, and this is an indication that they're not working as hard as perhaps they should. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe they are working as hard as they can, but that's basically, that's a sign that the Democratic Party should look at this and see that they're happy with the way things are going here. Because unless, there won't be, of course, another budget this year. There will be more budget meetings maybe if the budget doesn't pass, but again, that needs looking at. And then total since the election, these are motions, and the Republicans have done 160 motions and 172 seconds. That's 91% motions of all motions they did, and 93% of all seconds. The Democrats, 9 in the first quarter, or 16 for the total here, and 12 in the second column for 9% and 7%. So now, what I told you earlier, and I perhaps should have said this earlier, the Republicans, the reason I get these numbers for percentages, so you can see if they're carrying their weight or they're carrying too much weight or too little weight. Republicans, if you take 5, there are 5 Republicans, divide by the number of selectmen, they have 71% of the selectmen, 71%. The Democrats have, if you take 2 selectmen, divide by 7, you get 29%. So the numbers I showed you earlier should be more balanced in that sort of relationship. So if theoretically the Republicans should only be raising 71% of the motions and 71% of the seconds, and the Democrats should be moving way up to 29%. So, and you know, that's in a perfect world. It's never going to happen, but that's the kind of thing they want to approximate. So I encourage the Democratic Party to work with their selectmen and try to balance this out for the next quarterly report, which is already halfway to being there. With that, I want to thank you very much. And next week, I'll try to get back to the regular format. And don't forget, on the 12th of July, we're going to have the Highland Lake special where I read my green paper that I put out 2 years ago, hopefully to people at Highland Lake that aren't here in the wintertime. Thank you. See you next week.